Hey guys, welcome back to another animal video. This is the story of Bree, my African soft-furred rat. She has not had the best start in life, but yeah, I'm gonna tell you her story and how I managed to bond her with two beautiful little fancy mice, and they're all living together happy now. We'll start from the beginning, shall we? Basically, about a month or more ago, my flatmate sent me a picture of what looked like a fancy mouse that had been found at work. Yeah, it was white, little bits brown, kind of speckled looking, looked terrified. They found it on their balcony at work, like outside. Maybe it was testing out a new cannon. I don't know how it got up there, but it ended up out there. So they brought it inside, put it in like a little temporary bin enclosure with some food, sawdust, you know, yada, 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 the works. And it got to the point where they were like, hey, we need someone to look after it for the weekend. And I was like, yeah, that's fine. I'll look after it for the weekend. We'll find its owners, or, you know, we'll try and find someone to rehome it, because I know that mice do like company. So I was like, yeah, we'll find someone to send it to. But the more I dug into mouse care, because I was looking after it for the weekend, you know, do your research, guys. Impulse buys, impulse adoptions aren't always the best way to go. Take my word for it. I realised that she was less likely a fancy mouse and very much more likely an African soft-furred rat. Sadly, African soft-furred rats are mostly bred as feeders for many snakes and reptiles, etc., etc., simply because A, that's what they kind of have eaten in the wild. I'm not sure if that really correlates to anything, but apparently there are things about royal pythons and the like preferring African soft-furred rats to normal rats and mice. I'm not sure on that one. I'm not a snake expert. I don't even have any pet snakes. But she is most likely an escaped feeder mouse. No one came forward for the flats around my flatmates. The flats around my you know what I mean. The apartments that were around my flatmate's work. No one came forward about a missing mouse or African soft-furred. You know, I posted on some mice Facebook pages and forums, etc., etc. But at the end of the day, fancy mice breeders don't really want African soft-furred rats, from what I've gathered, mainly because they kind of have stinky personalities. I mean, I can tell you from Bree, she's not as bitey and like nasty in that aspect that a lot of people have said, but she is very skittish. Like, she has a tendency to freeze if I go near the cage. I almost never see her. Before I got the two fancy mice to go with her, I never saw her ever. The only thing I'd know that she's still in the tank was that there would be food put in there in the evening and it would be gone by morning, and that was it. I never saw her. She's not tame at all. I don't want to try and pick her up because she probably would bite me. She jumps like a nutter. She would escape the tub if I wasn't careful. But yeah, no, not really the best personality pet, and I can see why a lot of people didn't want to take her off my hands. So I've decided to keep her, full on committed to keeping her now. I'm not going to just ditch her or give her to someone that might use her as food. Not allowed in this country, but sadly it still does happen. But yeah, no, and with that commitment came the decision to get her some company, because mice, African soft-furreds included, do like company. They live in very big colonies in the wild, and people breed them in big colonies around the world as well. So they are not used to being alone, and I thought it might help her bring her out of her shell a little bit. So I eventually made the decision, after being unable to find any male fancy mice anywhere, breeders included at this point in time, to get two females. So there are now 3 of them. And yeah, I've never bonded mice before, but I have bonded rabbits. So basically, I put them in a little neutral territory box, a bit of bedding, some toilet paper tubes, and kind of just let them see how it went. The 2 females were already bonded, the 2 fancy mice. They came together as sisters. So it's just a matter of getting Bree to like them. When I put them in initially, there wasn't really any aggression at all.
お前はもう死んでいる。何?
Bree kind of was just giving them the hint to stay away from her, which is to be expected. She's probably been on her own a little while after escaping. She's probably quite scared of everything, and so I left them in there for a while. Not much was really happening. They were all kind of just sticking to their own sides. She would kind of do a little mock charge if they went near, and it wasn't progressing as well as I would hope. So eventually I made the decision to take the toilet paper tubes out of the sort of enclosure that I had them in, just to make sure that she wasn't getting overly defensive and wouldn't actually socialise with them at all. So eventually I took them out, and she kind of just, they stayed on their side, she stayed on her side, but there wasn't really any signs of aggression at all. There were some kind of mock charges from Bree, but the fancy mice didn't really care in the slightest. They had no reaction whatsoever to her aggression, so I made the decision to keep them together overnight. And I mean, I eventually slowly added things into the tank to see how it would go, and there wasn't really any aggression. Bree kind of just sat in the corner as if she hated life. She was not happy. The mice were going on the wheels and climbing about the place and sort of enjoying exploring. They didn't care about Bree. Bree didn't, I mean, it got to the point where she sort of sat there and she stopped charging at them, but she just didn't seem overall happy about them. And I sat there thinking, what have I done? I'm going to traumatize this poor African soft-fur rat. Not only has she been like, you know, bred and escaped and living on her own, I've like added on these fancy mice and she's going to be miserable and I hate it and I felt so bad for myself, but I decided to stick through it, stick with my guns, because that's sometimes how it goes with bonding. It was a similar thing when I bonded my rabbits. You always have one that seems to not be too happy, and then it's like, they're done. So I did leave them overnight. I was literally waking up like every hour just listening for noises. There were a couple of squeaks and everything, nothing too bad. And come morning, I could not see them in my tank anywhere, like at all. I was like, oh my god, they've escaped. But no, they were actually all under the bedding, sort of nestled together as a trio. Just, that was it done. They were less than 24 hours, probably about 8 or 9 hours they'd spent together by that point. And once Bree realised they weren't a threat, that was it really. I mean, the fancy mice were fantastic. They had no response whatsoever to her aggression. They kind of just completely blew off her squeaks entirely, like completely just blew them off. And she pretty quickly realised they weren't a threat to her, and now they're all snuggled up together and it's the cutest thing ever. I can't really show you now. I can probably show you just some pictures and stuff of them, simply because they're sleeping. It is the daytime. I don't want to wake them up. That's pretty much it. Now they're bonded. I'm going to work on increasing their tank. They are only in a 45-litre tub at the moment. I have 2. I'm going to have like a ladder system. It's gonna be fantastic. I'll do an update on their cage at some point. But yeah, that's it. I mean, now they're bonded. So African soft-fur rats and fancy mice can go together. I think one of the largest things that worked was they were all very young. Like my Bree, the African soft-fur, she is actually smaller than the 2 fancy mice at this point. And the fancy mice are less than a year old. They're probably about, I think they're like 6 months old or something. Like, that's still quite little. So she probably is still on the younger side. She is still probably under a year old as well. Judging by what I saw about sizes of African soft-fur, she will be getting bigger than them when she's fully grown. But no, she's actually quite small, and I think having them all young when they were introduced definitely helped towards bonding them. Younger animals tend to bond better, in my opinion, just because there's not as big a territory that's been made. Like, if you have a mouse on its own for a long period, sometimes they just don't get on with others. I've heard of some female mice that just will not want company ever. They are very antisocial ladies. But yeah, no, so they're all together happy now. They have very similar diets, so I'm not concerned on that aspect whatsoever. Bree, I have noticed, is a lot less active in the sense of, like, she doesn't really use the wheel. She won't, like, sort of, she'll kind of just pop her head out and she'll travel around under all the substrate. You don't really see her. She doesn't use the wheel at all. She won't really sort of explore things to the extent that the 2 fancy mice will. They're called Bree and Edam and Rue. That's the name of all of them. Jeez. Very original, I know. But yeah, like you can see the difference in the behavior from fancy mice and African soft-furs. There is definitely a marketable difference, and there is a difference between the behaviors. 100%. You can definitely see why people obviously prefer having fancy mice as pets to African soft-furs. They're already less than been here probably 3 or 4 days, and they're so much more curious about me than I think she ever will be. But that is just something I've committed to. I've made a commitment. I will take care of her, and I will make sure they have a great life here. If I can't handle her, then so be it. I'm not going to force that upon her at all. I mean, Marshmallow, for example, my rabbit, I can't handle. She hates it. I handle her as minimally as possible. And yeah, no, they get veggies, they get mixed foods, they get pellet foods, some hay, etc., etc. So that's pretty much the story of Bree and her 2 sisters now. Hopefully I'll be able to do an update video in the future with their upgraded cage abode. Don't think I'll ever be able to really get many good pictures of Bree though, but I will do my best for you guys. But yeah, if you want to get an update on the mice in the future, make sure to leave a like and subscribe and hit me up, and I will be doing a follow-up video when their mansion is complete. Until next time, guys. Bye!